This is America in the Morning from Westwood One. Good morning, I'm John Trout. It's Wednesday, October 2nd, 2024. Here's what's coming up on America in the Morning.
Walz and Vance disagree without being disagreeable in a very civil vice presidential debate. I'm Steve Futterman.
Israel defends itself from nearly 200 missiles launched by Iran.
Israel, with our assistance, was able to defeat this attack.
I'm John Stolnis in Washington.
Some 45,000 dockworkers in the U.S. are walking the picket line. They're striking over wages and automation. I'm Donna Warder.
A lawsuit surrounding election rules in Georgia.
It is a cry for clarification.
I'm Clayton Neville.
On Wall Street, stocks are coming off a down day on Middle East tension. I'm Jessica Ettinger.
The Labor Department reported that employers posted 8 million job vacancies in August. Hi up in Juwanee, Washington.
All ahead on America in the Morning. Ohio Senator J.D. Vance and Minnesota Governor Tim Walz sparred over immigration, the Middle East, abortion, child care, and gun violence among the many topics in their 90-minute and only vice presidential debate. Steve Futterman covered the face-off from New York.
For nearly an hour and 50 minutes, the two men presented very different views, but they did it without voices raised. Vance was clearly the smoother and more polished of the two. Both men defended their presidential candidates. Vance defending Donald Trump.
We need change. We need a new direction. We need a president who has already done this once before and did it well.
Walz defending Kamala Harris.
Kamala Harris is bringing us a new way forward. She's bringing us a politics of joy. She's bringing real solutions for the middle class.
There were, of course, many moments where the two disagreed, but it was civil. On abortion, Vance tried to come across as a kinder, gentler opponent of abortion. He was anything but strident.
California has a different viewpoint on this than Georgia. Georgia has a different viewpoint from Arizona. And the proper way to handle this is to let the individual states make their abortion policy.
Walz, though, insisted women must be able to make decisions about their bodies.
We're pro-women. We're pro-freedom to make your own choice. We know what the implications are to not be that. Women having miscarriages, women not getting the care.
On the economy, Walz talked about fairness, especially when it comes to taxing the rich.
How is it fair that you're paying your taxes every year and Donald Trump hasn't paid any federal tax in the last 15 years?
Vance argued going back to the Trump economic plan will give Americans more buying power.
I know what it's like to not be able to afford the things that you need to afford. We can do so much better.
Perhaps the most disagreeable moment came towards the end during the discussion of January 6th. And Trump's continued insistence that he actually won the 2020 election.
He is still saying he didn't lose the election. I would just ask that. Did he lose the 2020 election?
Tim, I'm focused on the future. Did Kamala Harris censor Americans from speaking their mind in the wake of the 2020 COVID situation?
That is a damning non-answer.
Walz's most uncomfortable moment came when he was asked about reports accusing him of embellishing when he has claimed in the past that he was in China in 1989 during the Tiananmen Square massacre.
I've tried to do the best I can, but I've not been perfect. And I'm a knucklehead at times.
In the wake of yesterday's events in the Middle East, both men made statements supporting Israel's right to defend itself. One issue that never came up, the war in Ukraine. I'm Steve Futterman reporting.
U.S. officials are backing Israel after Iran fired nearly 200 ballistic missiles at the Jewish state, the majority intercepted by Israeli defense systems and American interceptors. John Stolnis has the latest from Washington.
Israeli forces say 180 missiles were fired at them directly by the Iranian regime. The Israeli Defense Forces say nearly all of them were intercepted, although there were some direct hits and shrapnel that reached the ground. No one was injured in the wave of attacks. Afterwards, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said, Iran made a big mistake tonight and it will pay for it. The regime in Iran does not understand our determination to defend ourselves and our determination to retaliate against our enemies. The attacks happened around 7:30 in the evening local time. Iran said the attack was in response to the killing of Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah and a top Revolutionary Guard leader during an Israeli airstrike in Beirut last week. Vice President Kamala Harris said President Biden authorized the U.S. military to help shoot down some of the missiles.
We are still assessing the impact, but initial indications are that Israel, with our assistance, was able to defeat this attack. Our joint defenses have been effective, and this operation and successful cooperation saved many innocent lives.
The attacks came hours after Israeli forces reportedly entered southern Lebanon, carrying out what the government calls a limited ground operation, although the IDF says no ground combat with Hezbollah has taken place as of yet. General Mohammad Bagheri, Iran's top military leader, warns Israel not to retaliate further, saying, "If the Zionist regime, which has gone insane, is not contained by America and Europe and intends to continue such crimes or do anything against our sovereignty or territorial integrity, tonight's operation will be repeated with much higher magnitude, and we will hit all their infrastructures." John Stolnis, Washington.
Economic impact of the Dockworkers strike. When America in the Morning continues after these messages. Welcome back. Here with America in the Morning on what seemingly is a quiet weather day across the nation. With the forecast, here's AccuWeather.com meteorologist Carl Erickson.
With a lack of significant storms crossing the nation today, most of you will have a dry and quiet day weather-wise. There are a few trouble spots to keep an eye on. Much of the mid-Atlantic will continue to have a lack of sunshine today as low clouds will be hanging tough. Along with the gray skies, there'll be a couple of showers and some drizzle around that will dampen parts of Pennsylvania and West Virginia. Despite the cloudy skies, much of the I-95 corridor from the nation's capital to New York City and Boston should remain dry. A cold front moving through upstate New York and Vermont can produce more widespread showers there. Areas that were hard hit by Hurricane Helene from North Carolina to Georgia and the Florida Panhandle will have largely dry weather today with highs in the 80s as the cleanup efforts continue. Further south, there'll be some more storms firing up over central Florida that can produce localized flooding. High pressure will promote dry and warm weather across much of the nation's midsection. High temperatures will range from the 60s and 70s across the northern plains to toasty 80s and 90s across the central and southern plains, with 90s widespread across Texas. Meanwhile, pleasant weather will be found from St. Louis to Chicago with sunny skies and highs in the 70s. The southwest heat wave will continue today as record high temperatures will once again be challenged from Fresno to Las Vegas to Phoenix. Aside from the scorching heat, the rest of the west will remain dry, with the exception of far northwestern Washington, where there can be more in the way of clouds and a spotty shower. Out ahead of this, gusty winds will impact western parts of Montana and Wyoming. And that's the weather across America. In Washington, D.C. today, partly sunny, high 73. Meanwhile, in Los Angeles, sunny with a high of 90. That's the nation's weather. I'm AccuWeather.com meteorologist Carl Erickson.
I'm John Trout. Remember to follow us wherever you get your podcasts. Apple, Spotify, Amazon, and YouTube. Just search America in the Morning in your favorite listening app. Dockworkers in the U.S. from Maine to Texas are on strike. Correspondent Donna Warder reports with no talks scheduled, the nation could soon face new supply chain issues.
We're going to fight this thing until we get the contract we deserve. We're not looking for more than we deserve. We're just looking for what we deserve. No hurry, without a fair contract.
Some 45,000 dock workers in the U.S. are walking the picket line. They're striking over wages and automation, which threatens their jobs. Boyce Butler is the president of the International Longshoremen's Association Union Local in Philadelphia. He says they'll strike for as long as they need to.
We may be 60,000 members from Maine to Texas, but what we control in the economy is billions and billions and billions of dollars every day.
The U.S. Maritime Alliance, which represents the ports, says its latest offer to dock workers is a 50% pay increase over 6 years, and it's promising to keep limits on automation. The union says that offer still falls short of what dock workers are demanding in wages and job protections from automation. I'm Donna Warder.
Democrats are behind a lawsuit in Georgia surrounding the state's election laws, with November 5th just 5 weeks away. Correspondent Clayton Neville reports.
The rules in question in the swing state of Georgia were put in place by the election board in that state. Poll workers are required to independently hand count ballots in addition to machine counts, and election officials have to conduct a reasonable inquiry into election results before they're certified. The legal challenge is being brought by the Democratic National Committee and the Democratic Party of Georgia. The GOP-led election board argues that the rules boost election security and integrity, but critics say the measures will lead to confusion and delays on Election Day. During Tuesday's hearing, the judge in the case suggested he could rule that certification is mandatory, even if board members can investigate issues before the deadline.
The rules are there. They don't take precedence over statute.
Judge Robert C.I. McBurney.
And that to me doesn't assume malintent. It is a cry for clarification.
He said there very easily could be an outcome where there's no certification, and he posed the question, how is that consistent with the law? I'm Clayton Neville.
Disruption in Mideast oil production. Cheap airfare. Those stories part of business headlines when America in the Morning returns after these messages. You're with America in the Morning. The Business Report is brought to you by Fisher Investments. Fisher Investments takes a disciplined approach with investing, helping clients navigate volatile markets. Learn more at FisherInvestments.com. With the Wednesday Report, here's CNBC's Jessica Ettinger.
Wall Street opens this morning after a down day for the markets. Oil spiked on escalating Middle East tensions as Iran fired missiles at Israel. The Dow fell 173 points. Tech sold off. The Nasdaq lost 1.5%.
Over the last couple of years, these geopolitical threats have become realities. And when that happens, investors tend to panic, and we start seeing them, fire sale a lot of their holdings. And what we saw today was sort of just that, right?
Defiance ETF's Sylvia Jablonski on CNBC. There were companies yesterday whose shares hit fresh all-time highs, like weapons makers, Lockheed Martin and Raytheon. Nike shares lower on mixed quarterly results after the closing bell last night. U.S. crude ended trading yesterday after a spike up, then a pullback. Back down below $70 a barrel at the close, but oil prices are in play, even though right now there's plenty of oil on the market.
We do not have an undersupply situation in the market at present. Do the Israelis respond? Do they potentially target the Iranian oil facilities? Iran is producing at a 5-year high, over 3 million barrels a day. There is significant oil at stake if Iran wants to get involved in terms of raising the cost for the West for this war.
RBC's Halima Croft. The ILA Union, International Longshoremen's Association, on picket lines again today. 45,000 dock workers from Maine to Texas turned down a nearly 50% pay raise offer because it's not so much about the money. It's about robotic systems replacing them in their jobs. You may see certain items in short supply at stores in the next week or two, from imported alcohol to items made overseas like electronics and even bananas.
This is the time of year to be thinking about if you'll be flying holiday airfare prices.
Right now, actually, it's time to look for Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year's flights.
The best time to book those tickets is October. That is when, according to Hopper data, prices will be at their most affordable.
CNBC's Ana Teresa Solá says the travel industry, it's already set a special sale day of its own in December for good prices, but those airfares may not be as good as they are now.
If you do miss, by any chance, this opportunity window of October, you do have this quote-unquote last resort date, and that's December 9 or Travel Tuesday. That's when essentially most of the travel industry goes on sale, and it's kind of the same gist as Black Friday, Cyber Monday.
There's a lot more on holiday travel spending at CNBC.com. On today's watch list, earnings are coming from ConAgra and Levi Strauss. Tesla and Ford releasing auto sales numbers. We find out how many people applied for mortgages last week, and the Powerball jackpot tonight. More than $250 million at $275 million.
That's a lot. CNBC's Jessica Ettinger. Here's one interview Trump says no to when America in the Morning returns after these messages. Welcome back. This is America in the Morning. Looking for work or maybe even looking for a change? Here's a new report that shows there are a lot of job openings. Correspondent Haya Panjwani reports.
The Labor Department reported that employers posted 8 million job vacancies in August. That's up over 1.5 million from July. Economists had expected openings to be virtually unchanged. Layoffs fell in August, but the number of Americans quitting their jobs, a sign of confidence in the labor market, slid in August. Job openings have come down steadily since peaking in March 2022, but they remain above where they stood before the coronavirus pandemic hit the American economy in early 2020. Hayya Panjwani, Washington.
They do it every 4 years, but this time they'll be one candidate short. Correspondent Norman Hall reports Donald Trump has declined an interview for a 60 Minutes election special.
CBS News says that Republican presidential nominee Donald Trump has declined to participate in an interview with 60 Minutes for its election special, which will go forward next Monday with Democratic opponent Kamala Harris alone. TV's top-rated news program regularly invites the two presidential contenders for separate interviews that air back-to-back on a show near the election. This year, it is scheduled for Monday instead of its usual Sunday time slot. Asked for comment, the former president's campaign spokesman, Stephen Chung, said, "Fake news." CBS says its invitation to sit for an interview still stands. I'm Norman Hall.
America in the Morning for Wednesday, October 2nd, 2024 is produced by Jeff McKay. Our senior producer, Kevin Delaney. I'm John Trout. This is Westwood One. This is America in the Morning from Westwood One. I'm John Trout. Coming up this half hour.
What's likely to be the final debate before the election? Walz versus Vance. I'm Steve Futterman.
The U.S. promising a response following attacks on Israel. I'm Clayton Neville.
In North Carolina, where the devastation from Hurricane Helene is being called apocalyptic, I'm Julie Walker.
California sues a hospital, the latest election polls, and don't park that Jeep inside. We'll tell you why.
A new flurry of bad news is descending on Sean Diddy Combs. I'm Kevin Carr.
Actor John Amos, who appeared in the series Good Times and Roots, has died at the age of 84. I'm Archie Zaraletta with a look at his life.
Back after these messages. Summer-like heat still lingers. Welcome back. You're with America in the Morning. With the nation's forecast, here's AccuWeather.com meteorologist Carl Erickson.
That summertime heat will be hanging on today where it has been for the last week, from the southwest portion of the United States and right into the central and southern plains. The southwest heat wave will continue today as record-high temperatures will once again be challenged from Fresno to Las Vegas to Phoenix with triple-digit heat this afternoon. The unseasonably warm temperatures will also be felt across the central and southern plains where highs will be in the 80s and 90s with 90s widespread across Texas. High pressure will make for a nice day across much of the Great Lakes region down through the Ohio Valley with highs in the 60s and 70s under sunshine. This includes places like Detroit, Chicago, and St. Louis. The northwestern portion of the nation will have largely dry weather, although a shower may sneak into northwestern Washington this afternoon. Out ahead of this, gusty winds will impact western parts of Montana and western Wyoming. The weather will not be as nice across much of the mid-Atlantic, where low clouds will be hanging on. There will be a couple of showers as well, some drizzle also dampening parts of Pennsylvania and West Virginia. With the cloudy and damp conditions, temperatures will be on the cool side with highs in the 50s and lower 60s. Despite the cloudy skies, much of the I-95 corridor from the nation's capital to New York City and Boston should remain dry. A cold front moving through upstate New York and Vermont can produce more widespread showers there. Even a rumble of thunder cannot be ruled out this afternoon. Areas that were hard hit from Hurricane Helene from North Carolina to Georgia and the Florida Panhandle will have largely dry weather today with highs in the 80s as the cleanup efforts continue. Further south, there will be some storms firing up over central Florida with some localized flooding. That's the nation's weather. I'm AccuWeather.com meteorologist Carl Erickson.
Don't forget you can follow us wherever you get your podcasts. Apple, Spotify, Amazon, and YouTube. Just search America in the Morning in your favorite listening app. I'm John Trout. They were civil as they debated a number of issues, including foreign policy, fentanyl, climate change, and even who won the 2020 election without moderators fact-checking. Steve Futterman reports from the vice presidential debate in New York on the highlights and what was said after in the spin room.
From the start, one thing was very different than the two previous debates this year. This was not an angry slugfest. On a number of occasions, Tim Walz and J.D. Vance were actually cordial.
Tim just said something that I agree with. I agree with a lot of what Senator Vance said about what's happening.
Many issues were covered. Yesterday's events in Israel, abortion, January 6th, the economy, immigration. Even the 1989 Tiananmen Square massacre came up. J.D. Vance was clearly the smoother and more polished of the two. Early on, it seemed Tim Walz was a bit nervous. Afterwards, supporters of the two men came to the spin room to meet with reporters, their job to say their man was the winner. Republican Congresswoman Elise Stefanik from New York spoke to the BBC. She gave Vance a glowing review.
This was an overwhelming, dominating performance by J.D. Vance at a vice presidential debate. I think he very effectively spoke to the American people. And then importantly, he talked about the issues that matter to voters across this country.
Also praising Vance was his longtime friend Donald Trump Jr., who many feel played a key role in getting Vance on his father's ticket.
My father wants Americans to thrive, not barely survive. They've been barely surviving for the last 2 years, and it's because of the policies of Kamala Harris.
Democrats had a much different view. Senator Mark Kelly from Arizona, who was on Kamala Harris's vice presidential shortlist, had praise for Walz.
He has a vision, and he articulated that vision in plain spoken language compared to J.D., who is a Yale-trained, microphone.
And Senator Amy Klobuchar, who is from Tim Walz's home state of Minnesota, was critical of J.D. Vance's comments on abortion. She called Vance insincere when he said he sympathizes with women who feel they need to terminate their pregnancy.
While J.D. Vance kept saying, my heart goes out to, I kept thinking, but your policies are heartless, because Donald Trump's policies are heartless, no matter how much your heart goes out. Your heart may go out to a woman bleeding out in the parking lot that can't go in and get her health care that she needs, but your policies are heartless.
Of course, at any vice presidential debate, a key question is whether it will have any impact. Traditionally, the VP debates have not changed many voters' minds. I'm Steve Futterman reporting.
Washington, D.C. is reacting to the missile attacks on Israel by Iran. Correspondent Clayton Neville reports on the American response.
President Biden says that after 180 missiles were fired on Israel by Iran, it needs to be clear.
Make no mistake, the United States is fully supportive of Israel.
And as far as a response from the White House,
we have made clear that there will be consequences, severe consequences for this attack, and we will work with Israel to make that the case.
National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan.
We are now going to look at what the appropriate next steps are to secure, first and foremost, American interests, and then to promote stability to the maximum extent possible as we go forward.
The attacks on Israel come as regional tensions escalate in the Middle East. The killing of a Hezbollah commander reported in recent days, and attacks in Lebanon are increasing. A message for Americans in Lebanon.
U.S. citizens should avail themselves of commercial means to depart Lebanon.
Vice President Kamala Harris says she was in the Situation Room as the attacks unfolded.
As we monitored the attack in real time and ensured that the protection of U.S. personnel in the region is paramount.
And she made clear as the Democratic presidential nominee that moving forward,
we will never hesitate to take whatever action is necessary to defend U.S. forces and interests against Iran and Iran-backed terrorists. And we will continue to work with our allies and partners to disrupt Iran's aggressive behavior and hold them accountable.
The Republican nominee for president, former President Donald Trump, spoke about the attack on the campaign trail and said the conflict in the Middle East would never have happened under a Trump presidency.
Ever since Iran has been exporting terror all over the world, and it's been just unraveling. The whole Middle East has been unraveling, but of course the whole world has been unraveling since we left office. Russia would have never attacked Ukraine. This would have never happened in the Middle East. It wouldn't have been on October 7th.
On Capitol Hill, there are growing calls to cut the October recess short in the wake of the attacks on Israel. It's not clear, though, if that'll happen. Senator Lindsey Graham said in a statement that it's imperative Congress reconvene to pass a supplemental aid package. I'm Clayton Neville.
Rescuers are scouring the mountains of western North Carolina for survivors cut off by Hurricane Helene as the death toll mounts and people are desperate for food, clean drinking water, and for many, communications with the outside world. It is estimated that Helene dumped 40 trillion gallons of water on the southeast United States, and it's now the second deadliest storm in America in the past 20 years. Correspondent Julie Walker reports FEMA is responding to Hurricane Helene's destruction in 6 states, but there's an urgency in North Carolina where rescuers are trudging through knee-deep mud and debris.
But everything I have, including all my medicines from the VA, they were all floating around in the water, and I'm afraid to take stuff.
We lost power Thursday night, between Thursday night and Friday morning. We haven't had power, water, very low on food.
I don't think anybody was prepared. Nobody knew that this was going to happen, this devastation would happen. I don't fault anybody at this point, but yeah, the more help that we can get, the better.
In North Carolina, where the devastation from Hurricane Helene is being called apocalyptic, emergency workers clear roads, try to restore power, cell phone service, and reach stranded people. Asheville resident Carrie Owenby.
We can pretty much survive on everything else, but not having water is really worrisome. We've been gathering water to flush our toilets, kind of wash our dishes, but drinking water is getting low.
Water, food, and other supplies are being airlifted and hauled by mule to areas cut off by mudslides and washed-out roads. Asheville resident Elizabeth Teal Fleming was waiting in a long line for supplies.
We were not preparing for an event like this. We've had in the past hurricane warnings, and when they come, it's just, a rainstorm, and it hasn't been as devastating as this.
The storm's death toll across the southeast in the triple digits, with many still unaccounted for. I'm Julie Walker.
Labor violations. Apple being sued. When America in the Morning returns after these messages. Welcome back. You're with America in the Morning. I'm John Trout. The state of California has filed a lawsuit against a hospital for denying a pregnant woman having medical issues an emergency abortion. Details from correspondent Sue Aller.
Don't let me die. That's what Anna Nuslock said to doctors at a Catholic California hospital after she says doctors refused to give her an emergency abortion after her water broke just 15 weeks into her pregnancy. She was carrying twins. Nuslock spoke at a press conference.
And I needed an abortion so that my husband didn't lose both of his daughters and his wife in one night.
On Monday, Rob Bonta, the California Attorney General, filed a lawsuit against Providence St. Joseph Hospital in Eureka for denial of care and violating multiple California laws.
Attempting to discriminate against a pregnant person and put their lives at risk. Abortion care is health care.
Back in February, Nuslock was rushed to the hospital in pain and severely bleeding. She said the doctors told her because of hospital policy, an abortion couldn't be done because her life was not at enough risk. And since one twin still had traceable heart tones, they would not perform the emergency abortion.
It inflicted on me needless, protracted pain, bleeding, and trauma. It subjected me to further risk of medical complications by delaying the care I needed.
There has been no comment from Providence Hospital. I'm Sue Aller.
For many, the run-up to the election is a nail-biter. The New York Post released the latest poll showing Kamala Harris leading Donald Trump by 4 points nationally. And in the battleground states of Pennsylvania, Nevada, Wisconsin, and Michigan, the vice president is ahead by 2 percentage points or less, while the former president is leading in North Carolina, Georgia, and Arizona by 1 point or less. All of these battleground polls are within their margins of error, meaning there's no clarity on a favorite with 5 weeks to go before the election. In terms of favorability, 47% of Americans are okay with Harris, just a point ahead of her unfavorable rating, while Trump is viewed unfavorable by 52% of Americans, 9 points ahead of his favorable opinions. Shifting gears, an internal review shows the Drug Enforcement Administration failed to timely report torture by its Latin American partners. Correspondent Norman Hall explains.
A federal government watchdog is blasting the DEA for failing to timely report human rights violations committed by Latin American law enforcement partners who admitted to waterboarding, suffocating, and torturing crime suspects. The Justice Department's Office of the Inspector General cites the failure to follow the Leahy Act, which prohibits the U.S. from providing foreign assistance to security forces that violate human rights. The violations also included beating and use of a taser on suspects to obtain information. I'm Norman Hall.
Jeep is recalling more than 194,000 of its plug-in hybrid SUVs worldwide because they can catch fire with the ignition turned off. Jeep maker Stolnis is urging owners not to charge the SUVs and to park them outdoors and away from structures until they're repaired. The recall covers a number of Wrangler and Grand Cherokee models. Apple's being investigated by the National Labor Relations Board for violating their employee rights to organize. Here's Chuck Palm with that in today's Tech News.
A U.S. Labor Board has issued a complaint accusing Apple of violating their employees' rights to organize. The National Labor Relations Board has filed a complaint saying that Apple has required employees nationwide to sign legal confidentiality, non-disclosure, and non-compete agreements and other broad misconduct policies. The complaint accuses Apple of interfering with, restraining, and coercing employees in the exercise of their rights under federal labor law. An Apple spokesperson said they have always respected its employees' rights to discuss wages, hours, and working conditions. Apple also responded saying, "We strongly disagree with these claims and will continue to share the facts at the hearing." Apple is facing at least 2 other claims, stating they fired employees at their Cupertino, California headquarters for criticizing managers and illegally interfered with a union campaign at retail stores in Atlanta. The company has denied any wrongdoing. For up-to-date tech news, follow me on X at Chuck Palm.
A check of midweek sports. Here's America in the Morning's Robert Workman.
Baseball's best-of-3 wild-card round began Tuesday, and the visiting teams took 3 of the 4 series openers. In the American League, the Tigers tackled the Astros 3-1. Cy Young favorite Tarek Skubal went 6 scoreless innings in his postseason debut. His mate scratched out 3 consecutive run-scoring singles in the 3rd inning, and Bo Brieske snuffed out a 9th-inning rally with the winning run at the plate. The Royals blanked the Orioles 1-0. Cole Reagans and the Ronnies with a 5-hitter. Bobby Witt Jr. singled in the game's only run.
You always got to just stay locked in, control what we can control, and just really be ready for anything. And so just being able to kind of get a good pitch to hit was special.
National League, the Mets blew open a close one with a 5-run fifth to beat the Brewers 8-4. Mark Vientos and J.D. Martinez with 2-run singles in the rally. And the Padres shut out the Braves 4-0. Michael King struck out a dozen in his first postseason start, a combo 7-hitter. Long balls from Kyle Higashioka and Fernando Tatis Jr.
Man, this crowd is unbelievable. That's what I was waiting for, just the energy that people was going to bring.
Game 2 today at all 4 sites. Since the best-of-3 format was installed 2 years ago, the winning team in Game 1 has won every series. NFL Week 5 opens Thursday night in Atlanta with the Falcons at the Buccaneers. 2 players suspended yesterday for violating the league's personal conduct policy. Bills veteran edge rusher Von Miller will miss 4 games without pay, and Browns rookie defensive tackle Mike Hall Jr. received a 5-game suspension. That's Wednesday Sports.
Thank you, sir. When we return, Music Mogul in yet more hot water when America in the Morning returns after these messages. Welcome back, and thanks for listening. You're with America in the Morning. Our Kevin Carr reports that more than 100 new sexual assault allegations have been leveled against music mogul Sean Diddy Combs, including involving 24 minors.
An avalanche of lawsuits is set to fall on disgraced music mogul Sean Diddy Combs. On Tuesday, Texas attorney Tony Busby announced 120 accusers are prepared to file sexual assault allegations in the next 30 days.
The biggest secret in the entertainment industry that really wasn't a secret at all has finally been revealed to the world.
More than 3,000 people have come forward, a majority of them after Combs' indictment last month. Investigators are corroborating the stories with witnesses, pictures, texts, and videos. The 120 cases ready for trial include an equal number of male and female victims, with 25 individuals who were minors as young as 9 at the time of the assaults, dating back to 1991.
Most of these events and incidents occurred at parties, typically after parties, although several of these events occurred at auditions.
Most accusations follow the same pattern. Victims lured with promises of fame, given a drink laced with a drug, and loss of consciousness where sexual acts were performed by multiple people, often with an audience. Busby said other defendants, some of whom are well-known public figures, will be included when the cases are filed.
The names that we're going to name, assuming that our investigators confirm and corroborate what we've been told, are names that will shock you.
This week, former talk show host Wendy Williams, who had been critical of Combs in the past, spoke to the Daily Mail about so many charges and cases now, saying, quote, "It's about time. I'm Kevin Carr."
He was known for his starring roles on Roots and Good Times. Correspondent Margie Zaraletta reports on the death of actor John Amos at the age of 84.
Do I hear a knock at the door? I said, do I hear a knock at the door?
John Amos played James Evans Sr. on Good Times for 3 seasons. He was fired for his criticism of the white writing staff.
Thought I asked you to take the garbage out. Oh, I will, Dad. That's what you said a half hour ago, Junior. Oh, don't worry, Dad. I got it covered. Now, Junior!
He went on to earn an Emmy nomination for playing the adult Kunta Kinte in Roots. Amos said in a 1994 AP interview he felt that all facets of black society should be shown on TV.
Our taste and our culture is as diversified, if not more so, than any other culture on the face of the earth.
Before he got into acting, Amos worked as a social worker and had played minor league professional football. I'm Archie Zaraletta.
2 TV networks announced they decided not to run commercials for the movie The Apprentice about Donald Trump and his former hit television show during last night's vice presidential debate. Both ABC and CBS reportedly each declined to run the ads for the movie, which is expected to hit theaters October 11th, and notified Briarcliff Entertainment that the networks did not feel comfortable airing the ads either in the debate or in their newscasts, as the subject matter involved one of the candidates running for office. America in the Morning for Wednesday, October 2nd, 2024 is produced by Jeff McKay. Senior producer Kevin Delaney. I'm John Trout. This is Westwood One.